Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Ion Radio. I'm John, and this is the Backseat Admiral. So, welcome, everyone. If you're in the chat, go ahead and let me know if the mic and everything sounds good, and I'll just keep talking. So, today is the last day of the month of July, and it's going to be an early morning backseat stream. I just got off work, so hopefully this morning's finding you all well wherever you are around the world. Today we're going to be talking about our latest episode, Season 4, Episode 6, Tag vs. Sato. And it kind of like capstones off. I feel like it's been over a year now that I've been releasing videos that I've been tinkering with Sato and different ways to play him, and this is kind of like my preferred method to play Sato. I've been playing it like this for a long time, so when I talk about the list, I'll talk about how I've played it in the past and then how I've brought it to right now. So, Old Guy 360 Gaming, welcome, and thanks. I'm glad the sound sounds good. So I'm going to just start diving into it, I guess. So, like I said, Season 4, Episode 6. We're actually halfway through now. Season 4, it's going fast. So this is my Sato fleet. Sato is not a good commander, but he's actually one of my favorite commanders to play because he's such a puzzle. And the reason why he's a puzzle is his ability. Sato's ability is, while a friendly ship is attacking a ship at distance 1 of a friendly squadron before rolling attack dice, the attacker may replace up to 2 dice in his attack pool with an equal number of dice of any color or colors. So, to be able to pull that off, you have to have a reason to switch colors of dice. You also then have to have a fighter that is near them, and then a ship that's able to shoot that enemy ship that fighter's near to get any benefit from it. So there's a lot of moving parts involved in it for it to be useful. I believe we started this whole thing off by me playing a blue dice fleet, and I basically just took all my dice, I converted them to blue dice, and I think I was using Liberties and SW7, so then like all the damage is just pure damage. I didn't even have to think about it. It's just damage. And then we went to a like MC75 super brawler list that wants to get up in your face, and all of its dice then become black dice. It has double black crits type effects or add effects. And then I have like B-Wings that are just going to sit there right in front of you and give me that power. So this time I've gone back to, I think, one of my first like Sato ideas, and it typically involves around 2 MC30 scouts, so I can put spinal armaments on it, so then I have 2 red dice out of every side, an assault frigate, and then A-Wings to just throw forward to gain the Sato effect. So Sato, you kind of think of him as a squadron commander, but he's not, because he really wants the ships to be there to do the attacking. So he needs squadrons, but he can't be really a full dedicated squadron list. So you have to find this balancing point of how many squadrons do I take to be able to get Sato's ability off without them just dying immediately. And how many is too many, so then I don't have enough ships and enough upgrades on my ships that they can do something. So you got to find that balancing point, and that's what makes Sato so very difficult, especially with him costing so much. So the flagship is an Assault Frigate Mark IIB. It has Commander Sato and Ordnance Experts and Electronic Countermeasures. The Electronic Countermeasures is there just to keep it alive. The Ordnance Experts is there because I'm going to be switching everything to black dice, so I might as well be able to re-roll it. If you look at the dice layout of the ship, every single arc has at least 2 red dice. That means I could Sato it at long range. So ideally, I want to try to double arc so that I can convert the 2 dice to black dice and then be able to re-roll them with Ordnance Experts. That's really the plan with this ship. But it's really just a flagship, a little bit tankier than the rest. So let's get to my main damage dealers. My main damage dealers are a pair of MC-30 scout frigates. And with this upgrade suite, I have Ordnance Experts, Assault Proton Torpedo, Spinal Armament, and this one has Foresight. What this allows me to do with Spinal Armament is that adds a red dice in the front and the rear. So now every single side and front, every single arc has 2 red dice. Guess what? Sato allows me to convert 2 dice to any color. So that means I can throw 2 black dice out any side of the ship. And then I can reroll 2 black dice with Ordnance Experts. That's kind of perfect. So basically I just hunt to try to get at least 1 double out of that, and then try to trigger Assault Proton Torpedoes. And then I have a bunch of evades and I have Foresight, so I'm actually really good at dodging and canceling damage at long range, so that makes you want to come into me to fight me. But you don't, because then I just throw more black dice and I do more damage. Before, as kind of, I think we mentioned it, but then really didn't go into it while playing the game. The original version of this list was way back when Sato first came out, so that's way before the 1.5 rule changing, that like the black critical effects were exhaust, which is really scary, because then if I double arc you, I can throw 2 dice, roll them into hit crits, and then I can trigger Assault Proton Torpedoes against you twice with 1 ship. And that's crazy, especially like, let's say you have a full Star Destroyer. I roll in, let's say 3 damage, because that's usually what we'll come to. You take 3 damage to your shields, you take a face up. If you draw a structural, now you have 2 damage on your Star Destroyer and wounded shields. Then I attack you again, 3 damage at long range. Get a crit, another hull damage, maybe say something else, and another 3 damage somewhere. So now you've taken 6 shield damage, and you now have 3 damage cards on you. So it can very quickly before just eliminate ships. And that's one of the reasons why I love it. But man, as you saw, I melted an ISD pretty quickly with just really one of them at long range, just raining in. MC-30s are fantastic maneuvering, and you can just focus on navigating. And that's really a choice that I had to make. Like, do I navigate or do I concentrate fire? And being able to navigate to stay out of certain arcs, out of range, and then still get my own double arc gives me more dice and more damage potential than doing a confire. So I'm never going to confire. It's basically this whole ship is going to be stacked to just navigate, so I can get into that perfect position with the MC-30 to shoot at long range and switch them over to black dice. Foresight's just great defensively. The next ship, I decided not to go with Admo. I decided to go with Advanced Projectors because it kind of gives me the same effect that Foresight does, that I can switch shields to other shield locations when I take damage. And being redirects are your primary source of damage mitigation after the evades. Like, I found that to be more important than chucking a readied defense token to cancel 1 dice, because hopefully I'm not taking that many dice and I can just redirect it. But this is set up the same way to be able to throw 2 red dice, convert them to black dice out of every side, and then be able to reroll them. My last ship is a GR-75 medium transport CommsNet, and that's really just an activation and then passing tokens. Getting to the fighters, you have Shara Bay. She is an ace, and she has a scatter. So she can jump 5 away, and she probably won't die in 1 round. And that's important for Sato because you want the fighters to be close to the enemy ships, and they know that, so they're going to try to kill you off as fast as possible. You don't really want to attack her because of her counter 3 with crits doing damage, so she's mean. And then Tycho is the most important ace for this type of list because you can't keep him locked down. He can always be moving. So you can always have him in the proper position with Sato to be able to trigger his ability. And he has a scatter, so he stays alive very well. I've experimented before with using like Han Solo, and someone actually mentioned that in the comments to make sure you have the fighter. But that only really works if you're going first. Like, you can move Han Solo forward before everyone else because Han shoots first. And then the first player can go try to kill him off, and then you have no one in range. So I prefer just stacking up our squadrons on all my ships, and then I can launch 1 fighter forward and have them sit there to guarantee that on that ship's activation to shoot, I will be able to Sato. The rest of the fleet is a Hawk 290, mainly because why not? If I can position it and give intel which gives grit to everything so that I can maneuver my fighters out if I start getting locked down. And then I have 3 generic A-Wings. And if you count how many fighters I have 3 A-Wings plus 2 Aces. And I'm probably only going to be doing battle on 5 turns. Like the first turn, you're probably not going to be able to shoot anything. And so that means each round I can sacrifice 1 fighter to the enemy and still be able to trigger Sato. So the A-Wings go in first because they're cheaper, and then the Aces move in at the end of the game just to maintain that position. So that's kind of the list. It's kind of refined. In the past, I used to have like Gallant Haven on the assault frigate when it was like really, really lame and you could reduce things to 0 damage. And then I would have Jamming Barrier when you could flip it on and off because it was really lame before it got errated as well on the transport. So I could just have all my fighters sitting around Gallant Haven, the MC or the assault frigate, and I would reduce how many dice you could attack me with, and then I would reduce the damage. So my fighters had a very good chance of staying alive, and then I would then launch them at you. So that's the list. I think it works well. It takes a lot of like maneuvering skill to like get your ships right where you want them, shoot your red dice into blacks, scoot around and try to line up a double arc on another ship or the same ship. That's kind of the whole goal of this fleet. Now, the Fleet Ken Flew is one of our Patreon members' fleets. It is from Rovechkin. So I'm going to jump into the chat, see if you guys have any comments or anything like that, and then we'll go ahead and check out his fleet. Okay, it looks like Maxwell Silver's here. Good morning. Hopefully you're doing good on this last day of July. So yeah, Rovechkin submitted this fleet to us. He's one of our top tier admirals, and Ken flew it. It actually has a lot of fighters involved in it, and then I get to continue talking about Architens, which I've been talking about for the last couple of weeks. So let's go ahead and take a look at it. Feels like a cool list. Are you talking about the Sato list? Because actually, this is one of my favorite lists. It's actually kind of sad because through the course of experimenting on the channel to show you guys what different type of Sato lists look like, this has always been the one in the back of my mind that I want to get to the table, and I feel like it's been over a year since we've really been talking about it, so I finally was able to get it on the table. And now I'm experimenting with a whole bunch of nonsense with the Rebel Providence. And the Rebel Providence is going to be a blast to use with flat guns and salvo builds, because you gather the dice, like you pick up the dice with your salvo, and then Sato allows you to change those dice out. So you could be throwing 3 black dice at someone on a salvo attack at medium range. And that really, really intrigues me. So the next Sato iteration, when I get Sato back as a commander to build on the channel, might be a Sato Providence list, which would be really cool. So I'll have to figure out how to experiment with that, and then you guys will have another episode of Sato, because Sato is my favorite commander to build lists with. But let's go on to Rovechkin's list now. It is an Imperial 2 Star Destroyer with tag. Gunnery teams, electronic countermeasures, SW7s, H9s, and the Avenger title. What's interesting about the SW7s and the H9s is you pretty much can always guarantee you have enough accuracies that you need to do what you need to do with them. And then if you have too many, you can just convert them over to damage. So that's pretty good. The Avenger title, I know what he's going for with this. It's just not good since 1.5, and that's what's really, really frustrating. Like, Avenger before was really powerful. I would have rather kept the Avenger how it was. and increase the points. Like you could double the points and call it a 10-point upgrade, and I would use it and it would still be useful. But right now, it just doesn't do enough. While attacking, you may exhaust this card. If you do, the defender cannot spend more than one exhausted defense token during this attack. Okay, well, they're probably only going to spend one of their exhausted anyway, so yay. It completely eliminates a lot of shenanigans with like boarding troopers and things like that. Just like they still get to use a defense token, so they toss their brace. They were going to toss it anyway without the card, so now you're paying 5 points for them only to toss one token. So I don't feel like it's as useful, especially with all of the accuracy generating. Like they're not going to be able to spend tokens anyway, so you don't need Avenger on there, unless you just use Avenger, blah blah blah, so that you can just convert everything to damage. But I don't know. Then he has 2 Architens with the Turbo Laser reroute circuits, and that's pretty good because that does a lot of damage. Ken flies Architens extremely well, and I'll get into that before, like when we talk about the fleets. And I can compare that to how his survive different than how mine have in the last couple of games. The next ship is a Gazanti-class cruiser with CommsNet. Same reason I have a flotilla. Passing tokens. You got a big ship, you need a way to get tokens over to it. And now the fighters are kind of a unique blend of fighters. It's not a fighter group that I would normally fly, but all of them are very good when you put them together. So you have Mauler Mithril, who can splash damage. Awesome. You have Valen, who can attack counter aces without being attacked as long as they're engaged with something. Good. You have Saber Squadron, which can also kill things with counter. Really good. So all of a sudden you look at this list and you're like, oh man, my A-Wings with 4 health and counter are going to get annihilated by these aces. And then Black Squadron, so you have to attack him at least once before you can engage the other squadrons. It's just that little bit of buffer. Like hopefully you roll 2 damage and have to attack it twice. But it's like just a little bit more expensive than a standard TIE fighter, so it fits pretty well. And then you have a TIE Defender, which has a lot of health and pretty good at killing generics. Then a TIE Interceptor, which can jump really far and do a lot of damage as well. So it's a decent fighter build. I usually focus on one style of fighter. Like if you see my list, it's like, oh, I have 6 TIE Interceptors. But this is a pretty decent, like low-ish level fighter squad ball, because it's very versatile at quickly killing enemy fighters, which is really what you want to do, so then they don't kill you. It didn't do necessarily much in this because I didn't come to play the fighter game, even though I have a bunch of fighters. And that is because Sato is just lobbying them as sacrificial fighters just to trigger his ability. So go ahead, you can kill it. I'll throw another fighter. That's kind of my mindset on that. But I actually like this fighter spread. It's just a bunch of different fighters, and that's kind of cool. So that pretty much is that list. Really, the only thing I would say for sure change is I would drop Avenger, just because it should just stay in your binder at this point. So let's go ahead and take another look at chat, and I'll start pulling up the objectives, and we can talk about the objectives for the fleet. What did the card read before 1.5 on Avenger? The card before said that, I gotta remember if it's exhaust. I would actually have to look at the card. I don't believe it was, but it said that the defender could not spend exhausted defense tokens, period. It was at that same, like, kind of like Mon Cairn was like the counterpart to Avenger. Like Mon Cairn says that you can only spend 1 defense token when defending, period. Cool. Well, Avenger said that you cannot spend any exhausted defense token. So it worked really, really well with Sloan and like boarding troopers. So you would come in, usually it was a Kuat that came flying through and get into close range, trigger boarding troopers with a squadron token, knock out all your defense tokens to exhausted, and then it'll attack you with squadrons to try to flip and spend them completely off. Or it would just exhaust all of them, and then you would get hit with an Avenger close range shot, usually with X-Rax, and it would do like 13 points of damage usually. Like between 10 and 13 is what it would trigger off to. And then you just couldn't spend the exhausted defense tokens. And it was like almost a guaranteed with Sloan and boarding troopers that you would have no defense tokens at all, and you just eat right to the face all that damage. So that's what Avenger was before. Really, really powerful. And I think that if they left it how that was and just doubled even like 15 points, I think it would still have a place in the game. Right now, with them still, like, you would have to spend a whole bunch of Sloan points, a whole bunch of points in positioning to get into close range to trigger boarding troopers, and then they still can spend their defense points, and then you're spending 5 points for that. You might as well just make the attack without Avenger. So I think it's not as good anymore. Yeah, it used to be way better. Old guy 360 Gaming. And then Maxwell says, yes, it used to be glued to Kuats. Yeah, I used to play a lot of Sloan Kuat, and that's what I would do, especially with boarding troopers. One unfortunate person once had a Akbar list, and they had advanced gunnery in it. And I was like, yes, please, I'll take advanced gunnery. And then I proceeded to, he had like, I want to say they might have been assault frigates, and he had them in like a conga line, you know, and I just rushed my Star Destroyer right in between them, took the damage because he was I was first player, so I took the damage when I flew in, and then I triggered boarding troopers on one of them, and then I Sloaned with Jendon, a bunch of TIE interceptors, and Steel into the other one, and at the time, because it was before 1.5, evades did nothing at close range. So I needed 2 accuracies to do that on both. And then I gunnery teams, and I killed one. And then I took the other shot, and I killed the other one. And then I think he only had like a home 1 left, and I chased that down over the next course of a couple turns, because at that point, like, I just killed half your fleet in 1 activation. That's how good Avenger used to be, especially with boarding troopers. Like, it was like a guaranteed kill. And it was really powerful. That's why I'm like, 15 points? Yeah, keep it in the game, make it an exhaust or something dumb. But like right now, it's just nowhere near as good as it was. And with them still being able to spend defense tokens, why would I spend 5 points to maybe block them using one of their redirects? Like, no, not good. Okay, so let's talk about the objectives that I have and why they're in this fleet. I have most wanted, because like in this game, could you imagine that on every single shot I took at the Star Destroyer, I was able to add an additional black dice in for free, and then I get bonus points for killing it? That would be amazing. That's the one I really want you to pick, because then I just throw it on my GR75 and I don't care if it dies. And then my MC30s are just murder machines from long range, shooting 3 black dice out of every single arc. Great. Planetary ion cannons, basically to exhaust defense tokens and herd people into zones that I want them to be in. I don't really want to be sitting on a certain spot, so like contested outposts in this case doesn't really matter. I really don't want to be picking up any tokens with like VIP, because I don't want to attract fire to any specific location. So planetary ion cannons kind of lets me herd people where I want them to be, or they're going to be exhausting their defense tokens and taking lots of fire, things like that. Last one, Solar Corona, same basic thing. You deploy your fleet, and then I'll deploy mine exactly where I want to, so I can maneuver and try to get as many double arcs with all of my stuff in there. And then like I have MC30s, which are vulnerable to like getting accuracy and taking damage at long range, and I can then fly them off to the side, and then your accuracies get canceled out, and it's just better for me. So all of those are good. Ken ended up choosing planetary. I was thinking he was going to choose solar, honestly, but he chose planetary, and that was fine with me. Okay, so let's get into the game itself. So you can see Sato is sitting up here. Here is Ken's fleet. He has his Architens flying the way he normally does. I have my Ion inside this storm. So my plan from the very beginning of the game, like I said, I'm not here to play a squadron game, even though technically I think our squadron balls are roughly the same amount of points. I would have to check that real fast. So I'll just keep elaborating about deployment while I actually look that up. But I think I have roughly, I have 78 points of squadrons, and Ravechkin's list has in here 76. So we're pretty much even on the squadrons, except his are actually way meaner than mine. I just have A-wings. But mine are just there to trigger Sato. So I'm going to sit them on obstacles so that you can't lock them down, and then launch them at you right when I need to trigger it. Basically the first turn, everything just takes a squadron just so I have that one token. So when they need to attack, they can pull an A-wing and launch it forward. A-wings move speed 5. So as long as you're in range for me to touch you at distance 1, I probably can shoot you with my ships. That's kind of the thought process on this. And with all these obstacles, you don't really want to go straight into this fleet, because like I said, when you get close to the MC-30s, that's a lot of black dice, and I can then turn the red dice into blue dice to get accuracies to make sure that the damage sticks. Or I'm just hitting you with like 5 black dice out the side, which is super, super juicy. And this blocks, these are here to block you coming in. So clearly you're not going to play on this side of the board, so you're going to at one point have to turn in to here, so I should be able to get as much ion as possible. And if you look at this ship right here, it's pointing the opposite direction. And while that looks like it's just me trying to fly my ship to keep Sato alive, it's not. It was very much so because I've played Ken so many times, and his stupid Architens always get away with 1 health, and it's like me chasing it for 3 turns and not being able to kill it. I put it there specifically so that I can do a loop and end up right where my MC-30s are without just stopping it there at speed 0. So in my mind, what these ships are going to do is they're going to fly through the middle of the board and end up somewhere over here, while his Architens are going to just curve around me in like that, I think it's referred to as the toilet bowl. He's going to toilet bowl around me to here. So this is usually where, on my edge, that Ken's Architens just skirt down the edge and they survive on 1 health, and it's super annoying. And I didn't want that to happen again. So I positioned this ship knowing that it's basically going to fly to the middle of the board, get some shots off if it can, and then just head straight back toward me on like turn 5, 6 to try to cut him off. Because if he decides to go this way, out toward this far edge that's empty, my MC-30s can out chase him and land in positions that I can get good fire off. So this, I kind of want him to come in here so then I can trap him there. So that's kind of my deployment plan. As you can see, turn 2, I'm now sitting on top of the obstacles, just waiting for them to be able to be launched. And you can already see, like, this ship is already starting to line up a double arc on there. The nice thing about MC-30s is they're maneuverable at all their speeds, especially when you have nav dials, and you can like go super fast, super slow. You can be in a very good position to try to get a double arc. And I think I started mentioning it in the fleet overview, but like you could concentrate fire and add in an additional black dice. But for me personally, I think 2 clumps of 2 dice is better than 1 clump of 3 dice when it comes to defense tokens and things like that. So a navigate for me is the most valuable command, because it allows me to maneuver out of arcs to stay out of danger, and then line up double arcs as much as possible, or at least firing at 2 different locations, because that's what I'm here to do. And like right here, you can see that I'm just at long range, which is right where I want to be so my evades can do things. Ken's ships are coming down the middle, and his Architens are going to start flailing out. With the way I play, you like with Sato, you have to like defend your ships from squadrons being near them. Like I don't even need to attack. So Ken then has to like maneuver his squadrons in a place that he can then kill my squadrons. But like I'm on top of a station, so I can always be moving around at the end of turns to heal up and stay on the station. and then launch forward as needed. So this is like a hard place to move in to try to engage and try to kill my squadrons. And with us both only having like 70 points of squadrons, he doesn't have enough squadrons to really overwhelm how many squadrons I have here, and I have them spread out in different locations so you can't get them all at once. That's how this Sato list is. They're just there to be irritating. They're not there to actually fight squadrons. I end up dropping this transport to speed 0, mainly because it's flying directly onto this, and I need my squadrons to stay there, and I don't want this transport to, let them fly away or displace them. So sacrificing that is more important to me to maintain my squadrons than it is to maintaining that transport. So as you can see, like speed 0, facing down a Star Destroyer, I knew that there was a chance that Ken wasn't going to kill me with 4 dice. But at the same time, I'm like, it's Ken rolling dice, so 100% that transport's going to die. So he's going to just immediately vaporize it. And then you can see like these guys are moving, and they've moved into double arcs, and like as Ken's line moves, I'm going to keep with the double arcs. This ship was the one that came through here, and it's damaged, but that's fine because I have this whole board now that I can run from. We've done tons of damage into the Star Destroyer. It's about to explode. I have my sweeper ship coming in that I can then launch dice, and then it's going to turn forward to try to cut these guys off. Ken's fighters are just methodically killing my fighters as I'm landing as I go. As you can see, this guy's now has his escape route. This guy's turning in, so if Ken decides to go this way, I can jump at speed 4 and land somewhere in this vicinity to try to cut that escape off. This guy's now going to come straight at my home edge, which is where these guys are leaning to go. Or they could go over here. I have positioning that I can go either direction. And he does go that way. My ship goes off into the sunset. This ship comes down, preparing to get arc on everything. It puts Ken actually in a really, really hard spot, because I actually have him close range from both spots on here. That's why I ate that debris field, is that if he moves this first, this ship itself can side arc into both of these ships. If he moves this one, then this ship can go after it, and then this ship can finish that. If he moves this one, then he rams, then everything dies. So this is where that trap gets sprung, and that's where like the importance of, let me zoom in, Tycho came, because in the previous turn, Tycho's out here, and he kind of surrounds him with fighters, and he's like, peace, I want nothing to do with that, so I'll get up and move it away. Because you can't pin him, and that's like why he's the most important squadron, I think, for a Sato list, because he can just keep jumping around to wherever the ships are, avoiding squadrons. You just, like, why attack with them? Just get him out of there. Even in, like, the squadron phase, you can just move, so that's what I would do with it, and then everything explodes. So that's pretty much the game. Ken successfully was able to use Sato, I believe, once he got his brace back, and like honestly, that's more use of tag, not Sato. You know what I meant. Ken was able to use tag. That's more use than I normally get out of tag. Tag is a very difficult commander to use. I think the idea with Architens is that you can use the TRCs to trigger extra damage and then also defend, and then you can just gain them back the next round, which is actually pretty awesome. But I kept giving Ken really, really poor shots to try to do that with. So let's jump to the end score. I killed all of his active ships. I did not really touch a single one of his fighters except with flak. It ended up being then 400 points because I killed all active ships tabling. He killed that GR-75 with that beautiful shot when it's at speed 0. Killed a Hawk and 2 of the A-Wings, which are just expendable. All this is expendable. Calculated losses for 51 points. So that is the game. I'm going to jump over to chat, see if you guys have any thoughts or comments on it, and then go from there. Ken managed to get tagged to trigger once more than I have ever. That's funny. You said exactly the same thing. Like, honestly, tag is... He has so much potential. And you would think, like, spending your defense tokens would be useful. And I think what limits him the most is that it can't be back-to-back turns. If you could choose like turn, like what, 4 and 5, he'd probably be useful, or 3 and 4, he would be useful. Because they have to be spaced, you're like in this crunch spot of, do I do it too early and then I get no effect and then I'm dead? Or do I do it at the right time and then I get to use it once because my ship will probably die if it's taking that much firepower by turn 5? Like, it's a hard place to use him. Or like you want him to be on a big ship so then he can survive, and then he's good at like little architens like this that can trigger different abilities to spend tokens and things like that, but that requires them to be targeted, survive, and then get it back, and you want lots of them, so like he gets into a point crunch. So he's kind of like in the same point crunch that Sato is in a lot of times. Might as well not have a commander, yeah. Tag is the worst of the Empire. Fire him out the airlock with Vader. Yeah, you should choke him out. Get one effect out of him, choke him out with Officer Vader to get a reroll. If you had control of 10 squads for deployment in round 1, what would you have done? Let's go back to deployment. This is going the wrong way. Give me a second, let me pull that up. Okay, so Ken's squads are here. And Ken and I deploy very, very differently. I'm not necessarily a fan of sideways deployment, so my ships would still all have been pointed in toward that. But we already know I don't know how to fly Arc-10, so it doesn't matter. And I would have probably aimed for this spot right here with my Star Destroyer, because I want to cut them off and then have my Arc-10s over here to fly basically the same path, but faster. So the MC-30 would have to choose to fly straight ahead into a fire field of the Arc-10s and the Star Destroyer, or just go for the Arc-10s and then my Star Destroyer can go after them. The fighters, I would have started engaging and just started whittling them away, knowing that I have like Mauler Mithril and I have Valen, so you can't they do good damage against things. I would have done that, and I would have flown my Gazanti onto the station so they got displaced, so then I could jump on all of them. That's kind of like the way I would try to counter that, is I would have tried to displace them off of their things. And like, what sucks is like, the more I face Sato, because I actually, every time I go to a tournament, I end up facing a Sato list, and you always learn things like, you're not going to necessarily be able to dodge Sato, so just let it happen, because that's what's going to happen, and then deal with it when it happens. So let those fighters jump into you and just start killing them, and then proactively go after the other squadrons. I would have just been very aggressive with it, and I would have been commanding all of them with the ISD every single turn. But again, I would have been flying the ISD forward more into this area right here. It probably would have still died because Sato would have, all these things would have killed it. But then I could take out as many fighters as possible by actually actively engaging them every single time. So that would kind of be what I would do. I got a tag, like suicide them in and regain tokens. And then your fighters can just try to clean up as much as possible. And as soon as a fighter like jumps off of the station or obstacle, mithril them, shoot them. Since 1.5 and salvo, most Empire players around here build ISDs with flat guns and local fire control. If not, they die quick. I would agree with that. One of my co-hosts of the Command Stack has been talking about how he would fix ISDs, and that would be to give them an additional officer slot, which I actually can get behind. Like, Empire has a lot of interesting officer ideas, and that would kind of give it like that command ship feel. And then also to give it a native salvo. I'm torn on this. I could see it getting and also like the MC-80 should get it as well. Like, just replace the contain with the salvo, or just give it a salvo. I'm actually fine with either. Just to give it some extra oomph and give it some extra power to bring it up to par with like Republic Venators and Providences and Starhawks and everything like that. You do run into trouble with local fire control and things like that, and salvoing with like certain objectives like advanced gunnery, but you're already running into trouble with advanced gunnery on ISDs because you're usually running gunnery teams. So it's just something to think about. If you salvo into their hull zone, you can no longer attack that hull zone. So you can exploit that as the other player. So yeah. And like ISDs then are throwing like a blue and 2 reds at long range in all ranges, which is pretty good. So yeah, I would say using local fire is the way I've started to build my ISDs. I haven't had a lot of experience playing them on the table that way, but that's the way I've a lot of times been building it now. It also leaves you so then you don't need to have that Confire token to trigger gunnery teams. It's kind of like, it kind of pushes you. So before with ISDs, you could pretty much do whatever you wanted because you didn't need to recharge ECM. You didn't need to power gunnery teams. So you could like focus on engineering, or you could focus on navvying, or you could focus on squadroning. But with the changes in 1.5, like gunnery teams having that nerf that you have to use a Confire makes it very, very difficult to use any officers besides like Vanto or Wolf Yularen on ISDs. So if you drop the gunnery teams and you give yourself like the salvo ability, cool, you don't have to worry about doing a command as much anymore. And then you can focus on doing squadrons or doing navs or engineering. So it frees you up from needing like all 4 commands every turn. So I think that's a good idea. Let's see. With half the factions throwing salvo, Empire and Rebels need something. I actually think that the Rebels are already in a decent spot, mainly because of Agate. I think Agate's way too cheap for what she does, but you can put Agate and give any single ship that you want a salvo. And for the most part, Rebels aren't running gunnery teams, so you can just put in that local fire control on them, and then you can get a salvo. So Rebels have, I think, better access to salvo than the Imperials do. And Imperial ships just costing more and then still needing to be decked out with so many points puts them in a hard spot. Building fleets these days is a new ball game. Yes, it is. Something to also note is that because of recording things, sometimes like what you guys are seeing is almost like 6 months to a year behind when Ken and I actually did it. So while you're seeing something, it's technically delayed just because we always film way in advance in case, something like an emergency or, moving or a baby or a crisis happens, or like the one time, COVID lockdown, couldn't get together. Glad that we had 3 months of recording already done, or however many we did. So that's how we do it. So while I'm talking about this, Ken and I have already moved on to other bigger, better fleet building ideas, like what I was talking about with building Providence, Sato, maybe using that instead of the MC-30, or not the MC-30, instead of the assault frigate. There's other things that you can do to build, and that's already moving into the future. It's interesting to see what's going to shake out, because we're about to hit a ton of very, very high-end tournaments in the next month. I believe in the next month we have, so today is the German Grand Championships, and I mean, they're always crazy fighter Sato builds, so it'll be interesting to see what all those lists look like and what new ideas they've come up with there, or how dominant the Onager is, because they're usually I feel like Germany is very heavy Imperial, Sloan type, Morello type shenanigans. And then on the other side of it, they are very much Rebel MSU. So that differs than a lot of places, because in the United States right now, we're seeing Agate, beefy, tanky Rebels, not necessarily all MSU. And then Onagers for the Empire. So we'll see what comes out of that, and then compare that to what's going to be at Gen Con this week. because that's going to be probably one of the biggest tournaments in the United States going forward for the rest of the year. And then later on we have Nova, which is also a really big tournament. That's like at the end of August, beginning of September. So we have some very high-end tournaments that will have very, very different fleets, and it'll be interesting to see what type of builds and ideas all come out of that. Speaking of which, I will be at Gen Con. Ken and I both will be. So if you're going to be at Gen Con, make sure to, hit us up on Discord, see where we're at, see where you guys are at, and things like that. Near the end of the week, make sure to come by and say hi to us. We may have something special if you are able to find us. So try to find us. We're both hoping to get to day 2. It looks like right now day 2 will be an 8-person cut. So that will be pretty exciting. I've never made it to like one of those lower end cuts. I've always been like just outside like 9th or 10th. So I'm hoping this year to push into that top 8, make it to day 2. Ken is as well. So we're both excited. We're going to have our co-hosts from Command Stack there, Garrett and Ryan. So you can say hi to all 4 of us that were there. And there's just going to be a lot of good Armada players. So we're super excited for that. 2 days of Armada. And if Ken and I don't make second day, we're probably going to just bring a mat and some fleets and hang out around the Armada area. So if we don't, like, come meet up with us and maybe get a game in with us, that would be a lot of fun. So hoping to see all of you there. This week in Ion Radio, we have a new, how do I want to describe it? We have a new episode style that we're going to be releasing on Friday. And it's something Ken and I have been thinking about for a while. So we hope you guys enjoy it. And then the Monday, instead of doing a backseat, because I'll be just getting back from Gen Con, I'm going to have a recorded summary of how I fared in the Chicago Open that took place back at the Chicago Open. I think that was back in June. They asked me not to, a lot of people asked me not to cover their fleets or talk about the event until after Gen Con, because it was kind of like a Gen Con prep. So we'll be very interested to see how you guys respond to seeing me talk about that. I've been wanting to talk about that for quite a while. So your Gen Con list is amazing. If it's similar to your Chicago, yes. Yes, it is. So I'm hoping it does well. It's really just depends on what type of fleets show up. And that's one of those things that you can never know. And I'm usually like 100% wrong on guessing the meta for the events I go to. So we will see how I fare. Patreon members get a sneak peek still, right? I'll have to talk to Ken about that. I don't know. I'll talk to Ken, and then we'll probably post in our officers' lounge if that is the case or not. So usually we just keep it to the seasons, but maybe we'll release it early. So I think that's about it. I worked all last night, and I work again tonight, so I'm going to probably call it a night here and then head to bed. Thank you guys, everyone, for tuning in and chatting with me. It's always fun. This is actually one of my favorite things to do each week is come here and chat with you guys about the games and just talk about ideas. So until next time, I'm John. You've been watching Ion Radio, and this has been the Backseat Admiral. Hopefully see you guys at Gen Con.